on June 24th and immediately upended our nation. The media went crazy. A lot of folks on all sides of the life issue went crazy, and for good reason. Well, just 3 days later, on June 27th, the Supreme Court issued another opinion on another incredibly important case, which you probably didn't hear about, because Dobbs was just sucking up all the oxygen and the media's attention. Well, this particular case centered around an 18-year-old Marine veteran who served as an assistant coach for the Bremerton High School varsity football team in Washington State. Before he even coached his first game, Coach Joseph Kennedy made a commitment to God that he would give thanks at the conclusion of each game for what the players had accomplished and for the opportunity he had to be involved in their lives through football. Well, after several years with no incident, I think 7 years in fact, with no incident, school officials at Bremerton High School suddenly disapproved of Coach Kennedy's prayer practice. And they not only suspended him, but later fired him, claiming his private prayer at midfield following football games was unconstitutional. Well, as any good Marine would do in the face of an unwarranted attack, or any attack for that matter, Coach Kennedy stood his ground and challenged the school district, arguing that banning coaches from quietly praying just because they could be seen by the public is wrong and in fact violates the free speech and free exercise clauses of the U.S. Constitution. Well, 7 years later, after that action was filed, and following a multitude of defeats in lower courts, Coach Kennedy finally had his day before our nation's highest court. And this summer, on June 27th, the United States Supreme Court vindicated Coach Joe Kennedy when it issued its opinion in the case of Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. Tonight, we are privileged to hear about this incredible warrior and about his incredible journey from the man himself. Please help me welcome Coach Joe Kennedy.
Thank you. I'm confined to this little box right here, so you got to deal with me maybe pacing a little bit. I'm Coach Joe Kennedy. I don't even know where to start, really. I'll start out to fill you in a little bit of background on myself. I was one of those bad kids. You know, those kind of kids that nobody wants their kids to hang out with. That was me. I was terrible. My parents, they couldn't have kids, but like a good Catholic family, they wanted children. So they adopted a couple kids. And then through the miracle of science or through the miracle of God, whatever you want to call it, they started spitting out kids like left and right. And I think they had, something like seven kids. And they didn't really need us anymore. So I kind of was rebellious. And I took the wrong path. I really did. I was one of those horrible, horrible kids. Now you go, oh my gosh, why would your parents ever turn your back on a kid? You should have seen me, how bad I was. Well, during this time when I was such a terrible kid, I ran across this young girl. We were both 9 years old, and I ran across this young girl that my brother said, hey, there's this beautiful girl that lives down the road. She just moved in. And I was like, well, let's go see her. Let's go check her out. I walked down there, and I walked up to the front step, and there's this girl sitting there. And I walked up to her, and I'm standing above her, and I said, hey. And she looked up, and you know those cheesy movies, the word that everything goes into slow motion? She looks up, and she does that, brushes the hair out of her eyes, and looks up at me with these big brown eyes. And I was like, oh. And I'm just standing there with my mouth open wide, not knowing what to say. And she goes, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I want to marry you. So I proposed on our first day. She said, you're creepy, and went in the house. So me and my brother, we got in a fight, my first fist fight with my brother over who was going to marry her. And I can honestly say I beat the tar out of him then, and then 31 years later, I married her. So I'm a fighter. She is the stubborn one, obviously. So, yeah, I wasn't good enough because I was that bad kid, right? She's giving me that look again. I was always a fighter. I grew up fighting, and I didn't know why. I was just an angry kid. And I never understood why. I went through group homes and foster homes and child protective custody, a boys' home in Eastern Washington, and I was trying to find my place in the world. I didn't really know anything about God. And when I went to this boys' home, they were a kind of a paramilitary, but a Christian place. It's a place you go right before you go to juvie. So there I am, trying to figure out who I am, how do I fit in the world. And there were so many counselors there that were just awesome people that just sowed seeds and just life and words of God and the Bible into me every chance that they got. And of course, being stubborn, I didn't want anything to do with it. Sooner or later, I don't know, I think the minimum you could stay there is 6 months, and I was there for 2 years because I'm a slow learner at those kind of things. But I decided I'll give this God thing a try. And that's what I did. And it fit well. It was like a suit. I put on God's suit, and I'm surrounded by Christians, and I said, wow, this is really cool. I look good. And it's really easy when you're surrounded by, fellow Christians to be a Christian. Well, all things don't last forever, and I ended up moving back home, and I went right back into what I was doing. I was doing the drugs and doing the fighting and stealing and every other thing that you could possibly imagine. I was that kid doing that. And I needed to find some kind of outlet. Everybody in my life told me that I would never amount to anything. I didn't contribute to society. I was just one of those things that should be put away because I'm not serving any purpose. And that hit me hard. So I joined the Marine Corps, and I wanted to serve my country. I said I wanted to see what I was really made of. I wanted to prove everybody wrong, that I wasn't just, a loser. I wasn't the kid that was the bad kid always and should be locked up everywhere. So I joined the Marine Corps, and hey, it's a perfect fit for me. Guy who likes to fight nonstop. Yeah, get to protect the country. Thought it was a pretty good fit. I learned simple little things like discipline. I don't know how many people know about the Marine Corps, but they instill a little bit of discipline on the first day you're there. And I ended up staying. I thought I was going to be there for 4 years, and just one enlistment, and no, turned into 2, and then I'm halfway there, and I decided I'm going to make a life of it. Right when I was about to get out of the Marine Corps, I took all my Marines, and I was up in Washington doing rifle range. And my son, who lives up in Washington, who's, 15 or 16 at that time, or younger, 12, close. That's why she's here. She keeps me on track. 12, I don't know how old he is today, but yeah. So he came over, and we went out to lunch, and I said, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And he said, well, I'm actually going to go to Denise's house to celebrate her birthday. And I was like, really? You got her number? He goes, I think so. And he gave it to me. So I called her up, and lo and behold, she's just up the road. I didn't know where she was living. She was up in Marysville, and I called her, and I was all nervous, that kid. Oh, gosh, I'm going to talk to Denise. And I said, hey, I'm down in Tacoma. Is there any way that we can meet up? And she said, yeah. Well, I work 700 hours a week, but you could come by in the evening. And so I did. I stopped by, and as soon as I saw her, it was just like, boom, just like that first day. Nothing changed at all. And I was just like, oh my God, I love this girl. Would it be a little too forward to kiss her on the first date? Yeah, that's really too soon, but yeah, I didn't try. No, yeah, she had to confirm that one, just so you know. So we ended up getting together, and we found out, hey, God is doing great things in her life. She grew up in a church. She knew God, and she had a great relationship with him. And here's this heathen who wants to live with her. Well, God works in mysterious ways, and he has a sense of humor. So he paired us up. And then we got married, and it was Insta family. We have four and a half kids. 4.5 kids. We picked up a stray along the way. And we've been just living together and trying to make the best of it. Well, she went through a lot of things when she was a kid, a lot of abuse, and her ex-husband was a terrible man. And me being the Marine, I wanted to, just kill him, but I guess that's not, that's frowned upon today. So I didn't do that. But I ended up, just trying to make everything work, and it wasn't working. Because here I am trying to live in the world. There's no way you could possibly live in this world and be of this world, and they're whole equally yoked. You hear all these kind of things, but things were way out of balance, and I had no way to reach her. So the great thing was is she invited me to church every Sunday. I had every excuse. Oh, the Seahawks are playing. Oh, my truck needs to be buffed. Oh, I need to go floss the dog, anything. I did anything you possibly could to get out of going to church. Until the one day when our son said, well, if he doesn't have to go, do I have to go? Yeah, there's that face. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'm going to go. I went and I sat defiant for, 6 months or so. Yeah, she's like, 6 months at least. Sat there, arms crossed. Oh, man, this is just a joke. I can't believe I'm sitting here. Well, as things went on, our marriage kind of got really rocky, and I didn't know how to reach out to her. And finally, I was up to my limit, and I was in church, and they started playing one of those great church songs, and I Surrender or something like that. And I don't know what happened. I mean, just something hit me all of a sudden. It was like my chest broke open, and I went running up to the altar, but not in the center. I went way out to the side so nobody would see me. And I broke down, and I just started crying, sobbing my eyes out, and just saying, God, if you give me, my wife, if you help me with our relationship, I will give you everything I have for the rest of my days. And she saw that I actually broke down, and I was so serious about this relationship and being married that she came up, we had a good cry, and everything was perfect. We have this great life until I got called to coach football. I don't know anything about football. No kidding. X's and O's is not my thing. And it was funny when I went to the interview, they were like, why are we even looking at you? And I said, well, I checked out your team, and it's obvious you guys need discipline, you need leadership, you need team building, you need all the intangible things, all the things that those X's and O's guys are just missing out on. I could take all of that. I could talk to Timmy and Johnny about, everything under the sun. Oh man, Susie broke up with me this day. Oh, my parents kicked me out. Oh, we're homeless right now. And we took a lot of kids in over the years. And I don't know if anybody knows about coaching. You make about 7 cents an hour, which, isn't really worth it, especially when, for the money aspect of it. But taking these kids into your home, giving them a place that is safe to actually sleep, getting them dusted off, and getting them to perform at their highest on a Friday night was the ultimate thing that was the honor of my life. And I started doing that. On that Friday, they asked me if I would coach, because I told them this is what the school needs. And they all agreed. Well, I said, well, give me the weekend over, to think about it. I'm a brand new baby Christian. I've been a Christian for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I should probably talk to God and my family about this. And I did. I went home, and my kids, 2 of our kids were in the high school. So that's kind of a weird thing to have your dad at home and at school, especially being a Marine, which my kids want to get away. That's their safe haven. So we had a lot to talk about. Well, in the middle of the night, I was flipping through the channels, and there's absolutely nothing good on 793 channels at midnight. And then this movie came on, Facing the Giants, right? And I mean, here I am talking to God all weekend going, man, what, am I supposed to do this? This movie comes on, and for the second time, I fell to my knees. This one really hit me hard. The good thing I had an altar to actually kneel on, but, for church to give myself to God. But here was God coming through the TV, reaching right through those Kendrick brothers and just socks me in the gut. And I'm on the ground just bawling my eyes out. And I said, God, just like in the movie, I will give you the glory after every game. I hear you calling my name. I hear it. A lot of people go through life and have absolutely no idea what their calling is. This is the first time I actually knew what my calling was. And I said, I'm in. I'm 100% in. I'll give you the glory after every game, win or lose, right there on the battlefield. And that's what I did. It was something simple of a coach walking out, saying good game to everybody else, meeting with the coaches that, we're going to be playing on Monday. So I was a head coach of junior varsity. So varsity plays on Friday. We play on Monday. So I have 2 games every week. And I'm sitting there, what was I saying, hon? Facing the Giants, right. See, isn't she a good wife? So I'm sitting there, and I said I was going to do this. And I walk across the field, shake hands, and then I would go and I would just take a knee. Something so simple as a 15-second prayer. I might as well have been tying my shoe. Nobody knew what I was doing. And I did this for 8 years. We were in the middle of the 8th football season when this happened. And when it all came to, you think that somebody really was upset, or somebody had, they objected to it, or their feelings were hurt, or whatever reason they didn't want me to pray. But it actually came from a compliment. Somebody that saw what we did on the football field and called the principal and said, hey, I just want to tell you what your football program is doing is really awesome. So, of course, with any kind of compliment, you want to do an investigation, right? That makes sense. Their lawyers got involved, and we thought we could all work it out. We really did. And these people are my friends. These people have been my friends for almost a decade. And it came down to where we just, first time they said, hey, you could pray even when you're on duty, as long as it doesn't affect your job duties. No problem there. Check. Second letter they gave me, they said, you just can't pray with the kids. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate, but hey, your school, your rules, no problem. Check in the box. Third one, they gave me another letter, and they said, you just can't pray at all where people can see you. And that's where I just drew the line. I said, I'm not giving up my faith. I'm not giving in. Are you kidding me? In America, especially at a public school, they were like, the taxpayer. And I'm like, I'm the taxpayer. My kids, they all go to the school. And to make it all better, guess who the HR director of the school district was? My wonderful wife. Let that sink in. There's been many days and nights that we had intense fellowship. And it was intense. It really was. It was the hardest thing that I've ever had to go through. So this wasn't just something of some stubborn guy, and that's what I kept fighting with. Is this me? Is this my pride? What is this? And I really needed God to figure this out, because it was putting a huge strain on our marriage. And the coolest thing happened, not that it was a strain on our marriage, but here I am getting ready to sue my wife and the rest of the people in the Bremerton School District. And she's pretty upset, and I have no way of reaching out to her and trying to tell her, well, God's calling me to do this. You hear about stories, well, God calls people to do all kinds of weird stuff. I'm that guy. He's calling me to do this. And we just couldn't get past that. So she was crying, she was on the bed, and I was at my limit. I was like, I am hurting the one I love more than anything. This is terrible. There's no way I could go through this. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm just leaving. And I was on my way out the door, and she's bawling her eyes out on the bed, and I'm walking out the room, and my phone goes off. And I was like, who in the heck is doing? I don't know that number. Boom. It was the Kendrick brothers. They made a video and said, well, at first I stopped and I fell and I broke the banister going down our stairs. And my wife comes running out and she was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I hand her my phone and she says, do you want me to call 911? And I'm like, I'm not good at charades. I'm like, and so she looks at it and she hits play and we sat there and just bawled our eyes out and we knew it was going to be okay. God shows up exactly when we needed him to. Not when we wanted him to, but when we needed him to. So this lawsuit was not something I took lightly. I wanted nothing more to not sue my wife, because that's bad. Marital advice 101, don't sue your spouse. The other thing is, I just wanted to coach high school football. I didn't want this lawsuit. Are you kidding me? But God made that fighter when I was a kid, that little jerk of a kid that was always fighting, the Marine that was always fighting. God was putting those puzzle pieces together, and I never even knew it until that moment when I could take a step back and look, and it was like, wow, that guy knows what he's doing. I mean, God's pretty cool. He does cool stuff. He's got a sense of humor to sue your wife, but hey, I'm not God, so I'm not going to argue with him too much. So we went through the lawsuit. We lost at the district court. District court, the appeals court, the Supreme Court. They kicked it back, went to the district court, went to the appeals court. They kicked it around twice. And then back to the Supreme Court. So I'm 0-7 at this point. That's not a winning record. That's terrible. You'd fire a coach for that. Fire me for that record, not for praying and being thankful. So we go to the Supreme Court, and let me tell you, it is an answered prayer by every single one of you. Every single one of you. This is the coolest thing. The first place I ever talked was at a family policy up in Bremer, or up in Seattle. It was the very first one I ever spoke in public speaking. The biggest one I ever did was at the Pennsylvania. And I just went to the Salt and Light. Family policy is part of my life now. I feel like I'm family, which is the coolest thing. So I knew that this was a fundraiser, and when JR called and Heather and set it all up, I was like, yes, I'm in. I didn't even care what it was. Even if I just ate some chicken, I would have been totally happy with that. But I knew it was a fundraiser, and I said, well, I'm not really good at fundraising, but I guarantee you're going to get more money at this one than any other one. So don't make me a liar tonight. So I'm not good at selling stuff, but let me tell you, if you don't give tonight and you guys mess me over, I'm going to be highly embarrassed, and JR is never going to invite me back. But it is amazing what you guys have done. North Carolina, I'm in Washington State. You can't get much farther than that. And it's amazing that North Carolina reached their hand out. They did an amicus brief. They had their governor, their attorney, or everybody. It was legislation, the House, the Senate, and the Attorney General. Everybody in North Carolina jumped on my side. So when I look around this room, I can honestly say all of our prayers were answered. This was not my victory in my fight. This was ours. So when I had an opportunity to come up here and actually talk to you guys, I could look you all in the eyes and say, thank you. We did this. Do you know how cool that is? God answers prayers. He's very much alive. If he could take this time out of his day to win something for some schmuck from Washington, imagine what this room could do. Imagine what we're going to do as a collective whole. You guys are awesome. And I love every one of your prayers were felt from the moment it started, even to today, where I could look you all in the eyes and say, thank you so much. We won this fight. This wasn't my fight. This was our fight. And we won. Thank you.
Coach Kennedy, thank you so much. Truly, truly inspiring. We've arranged for a little bit of Q&A time. So if you have a really pressing question that you'd like to ask the coach, formulate that if you would. I do want to just, as we get started with this, I know that you certainly, I mean, it's amazing to hear all that you went through, all of the challenges, all of the barriers that were put in your way, both personal in your marriage. Denise, thank you for being here, and for and for validating his story. I heard Coach Kennedy speak a couple months ago at one of our national conferences, and I think you said pretty much the same stuff. And I don't think Denise was not there, so he didn't embellish things, tremendously. Maybe a few things, but not. But gosh, I mean, as we sit here and hear your story, and thank you for sharing about your upbringing and the sort of the challenges and the redemption that God offered to you as he offers to each one of us. That's incredible. But then to have made that commitment and then to be challenged with this kind of circumstance that brought things very much to home. But then, as you mentioned, you lost at the district court and then lost again and had a 0-7 record. As a football coach, man, that is tough to deal with. And as a football coach, you'd be sitting there going, what in the world am I doing? God, you must have been.
I got very frustrated, and thank God that no lie, all the lies, or all the people that have written to us. We gotten cards from everybody even around the world. So prayers have been felt and heard. People just pop up on your internet like Facebook and Instagram and everything else, and it was like, way to go. I mean, it's been felt, and I get to come to these events and hang out with cool people. So
that's awesome. Well, we know that you didn't do this all by yourself. I mean, there were prayers, but there was also one particular organization that represented you in court. Talk about First Liberty Institute a little bit, and sort of how in the world did that come about? How did they hear about your situation and then engage you and kind of went on this 7-year journey with you?
Right. So First Liberty is only thing that they do is defend religious liberty. That is it. You got ADF and a whole bunch of other groups that defend all the freedoms, but they are the biggest in just religious liberty, and that's all that they do. And thank God that it was pro bono, because that bill's about $10 million. Wow. I don't know how the average person could ever survive. If they didn't come and you guys didn't support me and them didn't support me, I would have gotten rolled right over. I mean, $10 million. And God, it was actually a God thing that hooked us up. And they said, let me hear your story. They were very interested, and they said that they would take it. And they fought beside me for the past 7 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we are fortunate to have groups like First Liberty and Alliance Defending Freedom and other Christian legal engagement firms representing a lot of interest. And we work very closely with a number of these organizations in partnership, because they have a lot of expertise and they've been battle tested, and often, especially on religious liberty cases, have a really great success rate, because just like in your situation, it was just completely unfounded what happened, and the school system, no offense, Denise, was just wrong.
Fire me anymore.
Was just wrong. I have actually have a copy of the opinion right here.
Are you going to read every line of it, right?
Not every line, but only about half of it, and it's like 70-something pages long. No, I did mark a couple things. As I read this the other night, just as a refresher, I read these couple sentences, and it was like, wow, this is incredible. Think of the United States Supreme Court writing this about you. Mr. Kennedy further felt pressured to abandon his practice of saying his own quiet, on-field post-game prayer. I'll leave out CID at 172. Those
That's the
cross references,
evidence,
yes. Driving home after a game, however, Mr. Kennedy felt upset that he had, quote, broken his commitment to God, unquote, by not offering his own prayer. So he turned his car around and returned to the field. By that point, everyone had left the stadium, and he walked to the 50-yard line and knelt to say a brief prayer of thanks. That's the United States Supreme Court talking about what this man here did. And with all of the opposition, all of the hurdles, all of the barriers that he's talked about, all of the losses, but he was compelled to stand firm for his commitment that he made to God. And that is just absolutely inspiring to me, and I know it is to you as well. So how did you feel when you read this decision? And I mean, what were the thoughts and feelings kind of going through your brain and your heart?
Well, like you said, Dobbs hit the week before.
Yeah.
We thought our case would drop before them, and we were kind of praying it would, so they want to get all jumbled. We had the Second Amendment that won. We had Dobbs, and then mine fell within. It's just week. And that's 3 awesome weeks.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and with my lawyers, and we're all watching the screen, and they're hitting refresh like crazy. And it was the first one and the only one that popped up on that day. And they go, there it is. And I go, there's what is? I know what it is, but my brain's fried. What is it? Well, tell me. Shh. We're reading, lawyers. I'm like, tell me what it is. Somebody please tell me what it says. And they said, we won. And I'm like, we did? 6-3. Woo! Then I didn't even have a chance to celebrate. I didn't celebrate till a week later because we did that big media blitz, and we were on the air within an hour. We totally derailed CNN. If you haven't seen that video, watch it. It's hilarious. And we got to tell the whole entire nation that this was a victory for every American, and that was the awesome thing about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. Questions? Anybody?
Really? Come on.
Wow. Yes, sir.
Are you still coaching, or what's the status of your employment?
Yeah. Good
Oh,
question.
yeah. So, no, I am not coaching yet. As everybody knows, the football season is partway through. And the last thing I wanted to do was disrupt the football in the middle of the season. It was a big enough disruption back in 2015 when this all started. I didn't want to do a crash landing in the middle. Talk about wedding crashers. This would have been terrible right in the middle. Can you imagine a coach and the coaching staff and these kids that have no idea who I am being thrown right into the middle of it? So I said, let's do it right. Let's do it in 2023. And the school has been dragging its feet this whole entire time. And yeah, she doesn't work for a school district anymore. So. It's not her office anymore because she would never drag her feet. She would have fired me a long time ago. But I just found out today, actually, as soon as I got off the plane, I got an email, and the school district for the first time we're going to talk on this coming Wednesday and negotiate the terms of my retirement. So you are the first people to hear that. I haven't shared that with anybody yet.
Yes, sir.
Did you actually interact with the justices, or was it all through the attorneys? And do you have any firsthand dealings with the justices?
We met a few of the justices along the way, but we never actually got a step even into the courtroom because it's post-COVID. The only ones that were allowed into the Supreme Court was 2 attorneys on each side, not the plaintiff, which is weird, and the media. So that was the only ones that... I should have put a badge on and walked in so I could hear my own case.
Yeah.
But me and my wife, we were just down the road. We were 2 blocks away, and right before the the closing argument, we walked over and we stood on the Supreme Court as my attorneys came out, and we got to do that, hi, I'm Kennedy kind of thing, So I didn't get to meet any of them, but I did tour toured the building quite a few times with my wife. It's awesome. Nothing personal, really? Wow.
Anybody? Yes?
Coach Joe, can only guess what type of mentoring that you experienced with your team, the last team you coached. How has this impacted some of their lives?
Wow. How did I impact their lives? I really struggle when I talk about my team, and my wife's over there going, oh gosh, here it comes. That is a really hard thing for me because I love coaching more than anything. Every year we would have our last supper in March, and we would talk as a family because I would start coaching and I would disappear till November. That's a long football season. And I gave everything to these kids, everything I possibly could. I gave them food, I gave them shelter, I gave them everything, clothes, everything. We provided for every one of those kids. And they were very much part of my life. That was my calling. And my wife, which I'm really ashamed to say, which I'm trying to make up for it now, is she said, I just wish that you were as good of a dad as you are to these kids. And that really hit me, but it also, I know that I have made an impact on these guys. This past winter, December 31st, I think it was, one of my football players called me up and said, hey, coach, I'm getting married. And I said, what? Who's marrying you? You're ugly, dude. And he said, well, I'm marrying one of the cheerleaders. And I'm like, what? You're marrying one of my cheerleaders? Which one? So we talked about it, and I was like, that's really awesome. And he said, would you come up and officiate the wedding for me? And so middle of winter, 3 feet of snow up in Washington, only about 18 people showed up to the thing. They had 300 invited. It got a huge snowstorm, and I got to marry those guys, and half my team showed up, and it was awesome. These guys meant the world to me. They are my life, and I stay in contact with almost every single one of them.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, way to stick that right in.
Yes, ma'am. In the back.
During the case, did you feel any discouragement? And if so, how did you handle it?
I was very, very discouraged. There was many times that we, as a family, we were discouraged. Every time we lost, I was discouraged. It seemed like every once in a while, somebody would, some keyboard commando would get on there and blow up my page, one of those trolls, and say just a whole bunch of horrible things about me. And I would stay up till like 3 o'clock in the morning trying to talk to these people with some kind of, common dignity. And no, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So we got hate mail. The school got hate mail. We got death threats. The school got death threats. So when I get a death threat, I'm like, you want to meet for lunch? I mean, you picked the wrong guy to threaten, buddy. And so I was very disappointed every time I heard. Actually, when I went to the hardest one was the Court of Appeals, the second time we went there. And the lead judge, there's 3-judge panel, the lead guy, he said, to top it all off, I mean, not just was I a bad person for doing all of this and dragging the school through this and showboating with the media about it, he also said, the way that I read the Bible, you should never pray in public. You should do that in a closet somewhere. This is coming from a sitting judge that has been appointed for life. So what you guys do matters at every single level, because these people that become judges, that I don't know if it was what call them crazy Democrats or liberals or whatever that term is, but they knew what they were doing. They took over the schools, they took over the judges, the whole thing there, the House and the Senate. So they hit every single aspect of it, and we kind of let it happen. We kind of stood by and said, well, as long as it doesn't affect us, they could do their thing. So there was many times I just wanted to quit. And each time, like when my wife and I were at odds, God came through right when he needed to show up and just kept us going. I would get a letter from somebody or a phone call, or there'd be a post from one of you, and that just kept me going. The prayers absolutely just kept me going the whole entire time.
So I want to read the conclusion of the opinion for you. And just keep in mind, talk about discouragement. It would have been so easy for Coach Kennedy to stop at any time along the way, to just say, God, you know, I'm done with this.
Yeah, peace out.
Yep. And have every reason to walk away. But he didn't. And so listen to the conclusion that our Supreme Court wrote. Respect for religious expressions is indispensable to life in a free and diverse republic. Whether those expressions take place in a sanctuary or on a field, and whether they manifest through the spoken word or a bowed head, here a government entity sought to punish an individual for engaging in a brief, quiet, personal religious observance, doubly protected by the First Amendment, or the free exercise and free speech clauses of the First Amendment. And the only meaningful justification the government offered for its reprisal rested on a mistaken view that it had a duty to ferret out and suppress religious observances, even as it allows comparable secular speech. The Constitution neither mandates nor tolerates that kind of discrimination. Mr. Kennedy is entitled to summary judgment on his First Amendment claims. The judgment of the Court of Appeals is reversed.